From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. I'm the CEO, Chief Creator of Amazing Ideas at Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's podcast, I sit down with my good friend and friend of the show, Todd Jones, and we talk about how to build an about page for your website. This is one episode you really want to listen to carefully. So grab your favorite drink and sit down and enjoy this podcast. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. I'm here with friend of the show, Todd Jones today, and we're going to talk a little bit about pages. Todd, how are you today?
Hey, I'm just trying to overcome the Monday morning slumps.
Yeah, we all know about those ones, and they're not always the most fun. So what is an about page, Todd?
Probably your second most visited page on your website, if you have one. I think, typically in the navigation menu, it says about or about us. And so that's the page where you really get a chance. I tell people there's 4 stories you should be telling, but 2 that you think about on a website. One is your customer story, right? And then one is your story. And this is where you get to tell your story. And, there's a plethora of things you talk about when you talk about telling your story. One of which is actually your story, which will be a core tenet of the about page that we're doing. But, it's a chance for you to showcase credibility, experience that you have, authority that you have. And then I say the biggest thing is it's a chance to build trust. Locally, you'll hear businesses say, businesses and people do business with those they know, like, and trust. That is your about page. It is a place where people can know, like, and trust you. And trust is a big deal, especially local businesses. We just got through, as having a mold remediation company to come in and remove the mold in our kitchen. Well, those guys were in our house almost every day for a week and a half. You've got to trust somebody like that, right? If you're letting somebody see, secure things like passwords and log into accounts that you use to help you with marketing and whatnot, it takes a level of trust to do that. When you're an online business, you don't typically sit down face to face across from someone to build that trust like you do in more of a local business. So you have to do that at your website and with your emails, and about page is a huge core of that, building that trust. And there's a couple ways a lot of people tend to just do a lot of people write about pages like the guy at the bar or at the party who talks about themselves all the time. Nobody likes that guy. He gets annoying real fast. And the key is to do it in a balanced way. And I don't know if I really answered your question, but the about page is where you get to kind of toot your own horn a little bit.
It's probably the only page on the website. I always say websites should be written for the customer or the prospective customer. Yeah. And the about page is probably the only page that's not written that way. It's written more to tell your story and what you want to get out there. And it's probably, I would agree with you. It's, when you look at website metrics and statistics, the number 1 page is your main page. The number 2 page is your about page. And believe it or not, the number 3 page, folks, is probably your contact page. Yeah, so think about those things.
Yeah, I think the about page is really, and I just started thinking about this recently, but if you have a sales page, that's essentially what it is. We don't call it that, but it has that kind of power and impact on your website that it can be like a sales page. I will say this. Yes, it is a place you could write about yourself and talk about yourself as a company, but you want to balance that. You don't want it to be all about you. So I always counsel people to start their about page with the customer.
Yeah. What would you include on the about page if you were, say, talking about a client? What would you start with including?
Well, if you actually use the form on the site, I'd pretty much put in those things, but I'll go through the things I asked for on the form to get going, or some of the things. And the first one I ask is how do you describe your business to friends or businesses? And along with that, what is your client's desired outcome? And the reason is I'm trying to get to somewhat of a value proposition. What would be, if you actually know, if you have refined and defined that about value proposition, then you're ahead of the game. A lot of people are not, but we're trying to get to what it is that you are trying to accomplish the most for your clients, and that's going to lead the page. Remember, I said we start the page talking to the client, to the customer. So so some of the things I'll ask for is what I call credibility enhancers. Those are guest posts, guest appearances on podcasts, testimonials, case studies, anything that kind of enhances that credibility aspect. Any place you've been featured, like if you've been featured in a trade publication or in a local newspaper or something like that, that is important to enhance your credibility. One thing I've recently decided should probably be on an about page is a bio. It doesn't have to be a long bio, but people typically are looking for that information. So it's a summarization of someone's CV, I guess. Then I'm going to want to see, I'm going to look for things that personalize you. So what are your passions and your hobbies? Let's take our friend Ryan Waterbury as an example. One thing I would talk about Ryan is how he works with dog breeders and certain dogs, and he actually volunteers for one of the nonprofit organizations that he's passionate about. But also that Ryan is he loves beer as well. We know that Ryan loves a good beer. So in local businesses, those are the types of things we would talk about to personalize Ryan a little bit. And then I want to see what are your values? What is your company values? And I think I see a mixture. Sometimes I see companies that have this pretty well defined, or at least modestly defined, and then some that don't. And I think that it's important to define what your values are. And another option with saying that would be, what is your brand manifesto, which is essentially the same thing, maybe going about it a little differently. So, and that takes some introspection as a business owner, especially if you're solo. If you're solo, you're like, well, what are my, you really have to sit back and think about it. And there's some things you can do to help bring that out, or you just get a skilled friend who can walk you through that process. But those values, you realize value shape. There's certain kinds of clients that we all will not work with. That's a value. There are certain kind of clients we will work with. There are certain boundaries we have as a professional. And why do we have those? Because we have some kind of value that we have attached to who we are. So I'm actually going to be in the process, probably need to do this today, but of rewriting my about page. And I can tell you right now, the first value, and it's might make some people uncomfortable a little bit, but the first value is I believe in that God created us in his own image. And the old theologians call it the imago Dei. It's a Latin term for image of God. And because of that determines how I treat people, how I try to treat people, I should say. Yep. That is a value. That's a strong value of mine. And I need to go through and figure out those other things as well. But I've thought about it a little bit. But these are things that even the solopreneur don't think about. Larger companies will have done that at some point. They have a marketing consultant or somebody who is their main marketing person, and they will have kind of sifted through and figured that out. That's why you see larger companies tend to have values on their about pages. But solopreneurs have values too. They just need to tap into what those are and put them on the about page. It also tells you something about the solopreneur. I mean, why does a solopreneur not want to work with people who breed wasps? Because a wasp stung him once when he was 4 years old in his stomach, and he hates wasps now. A lot of times there's a story behind each of those values as well.
Yeah, I would say too, you made a really interesting point about credibility. You said, show, podcasts you've been on or lectures you've been on. I think a lot of people, especially solopreneurs, actually undersell themselves. And I think what you need to do is you need to actually highlight those things you've been on and sort of say, hey, I've been on these podcasts. I've been asked to teach or join a class on a regular basis.
Right.
And to me, some people would say that's bragging. Unfortunately, in the world of sales, you have to
just
highlight yourself a little bit and do it in a way that's not over the top, but you got to be prepared to say that.
Yeah. And certainly you can get a friend to remind you, because when it comes to this, I have blinders. I'm very much like what you just said, underselling that stuff. And as you were saying that, I thought of two other things that I don't think I have in my website anywhere. So I'm like, okay, I need to add those. And it's maybe if you have, maybe us as friends should go, hey, you're on that podcast, you need to make sure you put that on your website now, just to kind of remind each other. But I think also getting a skilled copywriter to work on that about page can help as well, because we put blinders on when it comes to things about ourselves,
Yep.
And so you need somebody to find that.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't know how to use a skilled copywriter. So that leads me to my next question. So you have somebody that comes to you and they says, I want to do an about page, and I'm thinking about using AI to do it, artificial intelligence. And we've had many, many discussion the last while about copywriting artificial intelligence tools. What's your thoughts there?
Good luck.
Okay.
If you're going to use AI. No, I tell you where AI might actually work out pretty well. I haven't tried it, so I don't know. But for that short bio, an AI could be very helpful if you put in all the stuff, all the information that would normally come from a CV, and let it output it, and then just kind of edit it. That would be an area where the AI writing could be very helpful. But I think, getting the AI can't interview the customer like I'm going to do to pull out the story. I don't know. I think AI will just get better and better. So it's hard to know what role they'll have in all this stuff. I've heard different copywriters say how they use them. So, it's not like every copywriter is shunning AI. I think the thing is that you've got to find what works if you're going to do AI. AI, as far as writing an about page, I don't know that it can do all of it, but you might be able to do some of it with AI. But you as the person or the copywriter or whoever has to kind of assemble the page. And so, I want to put this here and this here. And there's so many things that go into it that have nothing to do with actually writing. So AI would just be a very small part of the equation if you were to use AI for an about page. I'm not sure how it would turn out. I would love to see what somebody does with it, but I think it could be helpful with writing that bio. That's a possibility.
I think where most people have a problem writing an about page is they don't know what to put on it. We've talked a little bit about some of the things that should go on it. And one of the tips I like to do, and I tell people, is sit with a piece of paper. Don't even sit in front of the computer and just start listing stuff out. because I think too many people, especially an about page or even a front page of a website, they jump on the computer, they jump into WordPress, they grab their favorite page builder and they start designing. And they have no sense of where direction they're going in or where they're going to go or how they're going to do it. Right. What's your thoughts on things like that?
Yeah, I should probably do that more myself. That is something I have started counseling myself to do more of. And I need to do more of it. To be honest with you, while it's not a novel idea, it's not anything that's new. The way that I kind of got rattled, I won't say rattled, but kind of got pushed to consider, taking a notepad, no computer. And I was talking about this on a call the other day. I don't remember which one it was, but it was Steve Roller that kind of reminded me that this is something I should do, because he would talk about, he's got a notepad, and like an actual notepad, and he writes stuff down all the time. And so it may be while he's at his coffee shop or, outside or somewhere else. And I'm thinking, I think that because I get distracted by the computer, and the problem with my setup, right, at home and at work, is I have one desk with the computer in front of me. Mm-hmm. So it's so easy to get distracted. What's going on Facebook? What did Rob say in our group? What's going on Twitter? What did Steve say in the circle group? That kind of thing. And whereas I've got no excuse, Rob. In the town that I live in, which is about 60,000 people, we've got 4 independent coffee shops. Grab a notepad and a pen and go to the coffee shop, get a cup of coffee, and brainstorm from your brain, But I think that's an excellent idea, especially when you're doing introspection on things like values, like you're trying to figure out what your brand manifesto is or whatever, or trying to remember all the things you did in the last year, that was good, that, like, okay, what podcast was on, I was on this podcast. I did this training for this company and this company. And I did this presentation at this virtual conference, etc. Those things sometimes come better to us when we're not distracted with our eyes on a computer. So,
yeah, I almost always, and I think I've told you this, I carry both a notepad and a sketchbook in my bag at all times.
Yeah, I used to do sketchbook thing a lot too.
And now that we're getting to the point where we can actually go work in a coffee shop again, I'm putting them in my bag more and more with the lockdowns coming out and everything else. So
yeah, my notepad has to be one that's bound at the top, because I'm left-handed. So these bound on the left side notebooks don't do me much good. So that's something I've learned in my adult life, is I have to get the ones that are what they might call pads or whatever. And
that really helps. I actually prefer, believe it or not, just the Hillroy 80-page notebooks. And little tip for anybody who's looking to get them, now's the time, because they all go on sale for back to school. So that's the
Hillroy.
80, usually at Staples. They'll put them on sale in Canada for like 10 cents a book or something. So I tend to buy them all around this time of year and put them on a shelf and use them.
How do you spell that?
Hillroy, I think.
Okay, I see. And you said Staple. I don't know if ours does or not. But.
Yeah. So in Canada. So, but find something you like. So, do something that works for you. And then what I tend to do is I take those ideas and I throw them into a swipe file on my computer after I put them together. And then you don't lose them. You've got a chance to massage them. You've got a chance to look at them. And then you've got, and for those who don't know, all a swipe file is a fancy term for files for ideas, really.
Right.
And I do that. You can do that in Word, Google Docs. I tend to use OneNote, whatever you want to use, and just kind of do it that way. How long should a good about page take to put together? There's a good question.
How long, like in time?
In time. Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know. Not 30 minutes. I'll say that. I mean, it depends on like if you're writing your own versus me writing it for somebody or something like that. I mean, because one of the first things I'm going to do is interview you, right? 60, 90 minutes, something like that. It's going to be me digesting your answers that you gave in the form, and clarifying, and then getting your origin story as a business. Let's talk about your origin story, and let's pull out the things I need to know to write that story. And as far as hours go, though, I don't know. I would say at least 4 or 5 hours, probably, but it could be as many as 10, I guess.
Yeah. It almost sounds like the best way to do your about page would be to get a friend, a colleague, a copywriter to actually interview you and ask you questions. And then maybe record those.
Yeah, exactly. It's you need this. I mean, if you're going to do a story driven about page, if you're not planning to put your story in there or your origin story in there, or you're not going to really delve in it too much, I guess you could just like write a cursory summary, which a lot of people do, and it's almost like a timeline, but those are not very compelling in my opinion. Yep. Versus writing a compelling story. So I think it's hard to do something about yourself. It's hard to do your own website. It's hard to write your own about page or bio. It's what is it, the coppers, kids have no shoes, right? Because it's hard to do what you have to do for yourself. It's all about getting outside and seeing yourself, or seeing how an audience would see you or try to see you. And it's the same as writing about your own business, right? All the ins and outs of our own business, and that's how we talk and think, but the customer comes at it from a different perspective.
Yep.
The strongest persuasion for someone else writing about your business or yourself is the fact that they can stand outside you and come at it from outside the company and think a little bit more like a customer can think, versus if you're talking about yourself or your company. That's my opinion. So
I would agree with that. It's funny. And the other thing I think that's hard on about pages is people like to put clients' names and say, I've worked with this client, I've worked with that client.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is many of us, me included, have signed NDAs. Yeah. And my NDAs are very explicit that I won't always tout my client names around. Any thoughts on how to get around that problem?
I mean, if you sign an NDA, I don't know enough about it legally, but I would assume that means you can't say anything about it. So you just have to put other things on there. And remember, we're talking about credibility enhancers. So maybe you work for a certain Fortune 500 company and you can't put their name on your website, but you can say that I was on this podcast with, this person. There are some things you just have to use other credibility enhancers. And maybe even, I don't know if it's possible, but I don't know how the NDAs work as much as somebody like you. But if you can get a person from the company to say, give you a testimonial without maybe breaking the NDA, if you can do that, that might be helpful. But I think you just have to use different credibility enhancers. You might be able to, put in there that you work with so many Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies or whatever. But you have to respect your NDA. So I would just say, don't break the NDA. And like I said, use other credibility enhancers,
Yep.
You might be able to, get a testimonial from somebody without advocating that you actually worked for this Fortune 500 company you have an NDA with. I don't know enough about that. I just say, it's about getting credibility enhancers, and you can do it in multiple ways. So, if you have a thing where you can like privately show them, hey, I work with this company, then maybe you could indicate somehow that you can tell that to them privately. But I guess the only thing I could say is you need to respect your NDA.
Yeah. Any other suggestions for what should go on an about page, Todd, that we haven't talked about?
I'll pull up my notes here. I'm going to say you start with that. I think I said this, but you start with that value proposition, that desired outcome. Here's the thing. I think if you have a unique process, maybe we talk a lot about. My friend Nabil says, you can create a framework and brand it, and a lot of people do that. And sometimes the framework may not be much different than your competitor, but you branded it. And it's sort of like what I did with website copy framework, similar to what Donald Miller did with story brand framework. Those kinds of things. The duct tape marketing people, they did one. So if you do that, I think it's good to, lay that out on your about page. Hey, I'm we created the story brand framework, blah, blah, blah. If that's that's another credibility enhancer. So that's one thing you could do. I talked about having values, but I think having a purpose, mission, and vision, that's the same thing. But it doesn't have to be values. You could say our purpose or our vision or our mission is this. And then call to actions. Do not neglect call to action. So I would say your top content or your top offering for sure. Those should be like, maybe you've got 2 or 3, like just pillar posts that you've written, pillar articles, cornerstone content. You should probably put that on there. And then if you have like a top or the most popular product or service you have, I would include that on there. And then finally, at the bottom, I think it's a great place. You kind of warmed them up a little bit, get them on your email list. Maybe you have a lead magnet or some kind, or freebie you give away. It's a great place to do it right there. Download our free whatever, and you get them on your about page. So don't neglect call to actions. That is probably one of the biggest mistakes or things that I see people leave out on their about page. And I think largely because they do write just such a benign, non-compelling about page, but if you're writing one that showcases who you are, your expertise, and is a little bit compelling, then throw in definitely have some call to actions. And those 3 things are worth considering: your top content, your top product or service, and your email newsletter. So.
Yep, I would agree. And we've had all these discussions lately about email newsletters, and that's an interesting one because I don't think they've ever gone away. Some people say they're making a comeback. I don't necessarily agree. I think email newsletters are still where it's at. I put one out last week, the one that I talked about, website care plans, and the email newsletter open rate was over 60% again. So people are still reading email newsletters. It's just
they are. And the thing about email newsletters, there's not one type of email newsletter anymore, right? And maybe, I don't know, curated type emails, like what Devender does with the WP Weekly, those types of emails, I don't know if they're making a comeback, but they certainly seem to have, at least in our circle, gathered a little bit of popularity recently, newfound popularity. But that's one kind of email, the curated email newsletter. Ann Hanley, that's what she writes as well on Sundays.
That's what I write as well.
Yeah. Then you have the straight like nurture emails, which is really kind of like what I do, really more or less, where I just kind of talk to you, maybe tell a story or to illustrate a point. And then you have the emails that are really part of a sequence that is either part of a funnel or a nurture sequence or something like that. And you have, and then you have the guys like Ben Settle and a few others that write every single day. And that's a totally different animal. And not everybody can do that. So, I think there's at least 3 or 4 types of, archetypes of email newsletters. And so it's just really kind of hard. Is not only is it not gone away, I think over time we've expanded the footprint of what it means to have an email newsletter based on all these different archetypes.
I do too. If somebody wants to work with you on an about page, how's the best way to get a hold of you, Todd?
Copyflight.com, and I've got kind of a new homepage to kind of try to make it simpler. And there's 3 below above the fold area is 3 little blocks, which I'm sure the vendor can make prettier. And the first one is custom about pages, and you click on that and it takes you to the custom about page landing page. And at the bottom there's a form. You just click the button, it pops up, and fill out the information, submit your payment, and we get started.
And you take the payment right off the page now, Todd?
Yeah, I integrated Stripe with Gravity Forms with help from Ryan. And so that is, you make the payment. In fact, there's a additional as an add-on option to do that small bio if you don't have one and you want me to do it. And so that costs a little bit extra, and this is pretty streamlined right now. We'll see how it goes, and if it works pretty well, we may add some additional stuff to maybe different tiers or something like that. We'll see.
Okay. Thanks for joining me, Todd. Have a wonderful day, and go get those about pages.
Thank you, good sir.
A very special thank you to Todd Jones for joining me to talk about one of his passions, about pages. If you could use Todd's services, please see his website, copyfight.com. Thanks for listening to the SDM Show. The show is a production of Stunning Digital Marketing, and all rights are reserved. Rob can be reached by email at vip@stunningdigitalmarketing.com, on Twitter @Rob Cairns, on his website, stunningdigitalmarketing.com, and on his website there's links to all his social media platforms. This show is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Make your business succeed.